Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in, because today we're unpacking what honestly might be the single most important shift you can make to guarantee your offer actually sells. I mean, if you've ever spent weeks, or let's be real, maybe even months, crafting something incredible, pouring your absolute heart and soul into a project, only to hear absolute crickets when you finally launch it, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to completely move away from focusing on what you offer and instead shift the entire spotlight onto what problem you're actually solving.
So let's start by validating a massive, super common frustration. You built a great product. You know for a fact it works. You know it has tremendous value and it can genuinely change things for people. But nobody is buying it. It's literally the worst feeling. But it almost always comes down to this one kinda harsh reality. People just do not buy offers. They don't buy your modules, they don't buy your perfectly structured coaching hours, and they definitely aren't buying your clever proprietary frameworks.
Which naturally begs the question, right? If they aren't buying the offer itself, what on earth are they buying? Well, the answer is simple, but it's totally profound. Customers are buying solutions. Specifically, solutions to problems they already know they have and problems they're highly motivated to fix. Think about it like this. Nobody buys a drill because they just really want to own a drill. They buy a drill because they desperately need a quarter-inch hole in their wall. If your audience doesn't clearly see their specific hole in the wall reflected in your messaging, it doesn't matter how shiny and powerful your drill is, they're going to walk right past it.
Section 1. Customer awareness levels.
Okay, so before we even attempt to sell to someone, we've got to zoom out a bit. We need to figure out exactly where the customer is inside their own head. And to do that, we're going to lean on a brilliant, totally classic framework by the legendary marketing strategist Eugene Schwartz. He introduced this concept called customer awareness levels. Basically, this framework categorizes how conscious a potential customer actually is of their own problem, and by extension, your solution. Because, as it turns out, problem awareness isn't just a simple yes or no. It exists on a highly variable spectrum.
And this spectrum breaks down into 5 distinct steps. First up, you have folks who are completely unaware. They don't even know they have a problem at all, let alone that they need help. Second, they become problem aware. So they know they're struggling, they feel the pain, but they have no idea that any viable solutions actually exist. Third is solution aware. Now they know solutions are out there and they're actively out in the market comparing their options. Fourth, they become product aware. This is where they are directly evaluating you and your specific offer. And finally, step 5, most aware. These people are ready to buy. They literally just need the right opportunity placed in front of them at the exact right time. Listen, if you've been doing the groundwork, those initial customer discovery conversations you've been having likely revealed exactly where your audience sits on this ladder. And knowing that, it absolutely has to shape everything you do, from your free content all the way to the final words on your sales page.
Section 2. Symptom versus root cause.
All right, this brings us to what is kind of the absolute climax of our whole explainer. It's a major pitfall I like to call the expert's curse. Listen to the stark contrast in how people talk. On one hand, you have the customer using symptom language. They're sitting at home super frustrated saying, I just can't stick to a schedule. But then you have you, the expert. You understand the deeper mechanics underneath it all, so you describe that exact same problem using root cause or clinical language. You call it a lack of time-blocking discipline. Because let's be honest, as experts, we kind of love to overcomplicate things to sound smart, don't we?
Let's look at another classic example of this. You've got a customer pulling their hair out saying, my website gets absolutely no traffic. I feel so behind. That is the symptom they are experiencing every single day. But the expert looks at it, diagnoses it, and calmly says, yes, you need to learn SEO fundamentals. Here is why this is so dangerous. An offer described in expert language, even if it's 100% technically accurate, almost always fails to connect. Why? Because the customer literally does not recognize their own problem in those fancy words. If they're looking for a simple bandage for a scraped knee, and you're out here trying to sell them a dermal abrasion recovery matrix, they're just going to keep walking.
So the huge takeaway here is this. Effective offer naming requires taking all of your deep, hard-earned expert knowledge and translating it right back into the customer's actual words. You have to state the problem exactly the way it sounds in their own head. And the best part? You don't have to guess these words. You gather them directly from the target audience research in those discovery calls we talked about earlier. Keep a record of the exact phrases they use to complain about their day, and I promise you, use those exact phrases when you present your solution.
Section 3. The cost of inaction.
Now let's pick up the pace a bit and talk about urgency. Because identifying the problem, that's really only half the battle.
We also have to figure out exactly why a customer feels this absolute burning need to buy your solution right now instead of just, putting it off until next year. Listen to this specific frustration from a real customer. I'm losing 10 hours a week to a process that could take 2, which is the equivalent of an unpaid extra part-time job. Notice how unbelievably specific that is? A problem only motivates a purchase when the cost of ignoring it feels totally real and concrete. It has to feel like an ongoing frustration, like lost money, or in this specific case, severely lost time.
10 hours. Just let the gravity of bleeding 10 hours every single week to a broken system really sink in for a second. Vague desires, like someone casually mentioning, "Yeah, I'd really like to be more productive," those rarely ever actually motivate a purchase. It's just too soft. But specific, costed problems? I am bleeding 10 hours a week to this broken system. Now that motivates action. You have to make the cost of inaction concrete, specific, and totally grounded in the realities you found during your audience research.
Section 4. Solving one specific problem. All right, let's wrap this up with a really powerful principle of subtraction. We need to talk about why you have to resist a temptation that catches pretty much every creator and entrepreneur off guard at some point. It is so incredibly tempting to build your offer like the ultimate Swiss Army knife, trying to solve 5 or 10 different problems at once, hoping that if you cast a massive net, you're going to appeal to way more people. But let's be real, nobody actually uses that tiny plastic toothpick anyway, right? In the real world, an offer that clearly solves one specific painful problem will completely outperform an offer that vaguely waves at 5. Why? Because clarity is what actually earns attention in a crowded, noisy market. When you are crystal clear about the one specific pain point you relieve, heads turn. And then, once you've captured their attention, the absolute depth of your focused solution is what earns their long-term trust.
So I want to leave you with a question to really chew on today, and I want you to apply this directly to your own business right now. If you had to strip absolutely everything else away, if you could only solve one single painful problem for your customer today, what would it be? Answer that question in their own words, make the cost of inaction undeniably clear, and just watch how much easier it becomes to sell your solution. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.